material, I'm going to let you know what you should really focus on and what really doesn't show up too much. Like there's a lot of court cases that you don't need to quote by name, but you need to know like what it has to do with, what the learning experience is from that. Tonight we have some interesting court cases that we're going to review. You're going to make up flashcards, so you should go to the store and buy index cards. I'm not sure 100's enough, so buy 2. Never hurts to have extra flashcards around, okay? Especially if you make a mistake. And as we go through the material, you want to make up flashcards, okay? Anyway, so let's look at the first page of chapter 1. Turns out that it's also page 1. So we're going to look at page 1, chapter 1. The Department of State is the agency. I'm on the first paragraph of page 1. The Department of State is the agency that regulates real estate agents and brokers. You should know that. DOS is the abbreviation we use for Department of State. That's DOS, Department of State. Misdemeanor we talk about at the end of the first paragraph. So if you violate the license law, you can get a misdemeanor. Now, the only way to not get a misdemeanor is if you kill one of your buyers and sellers. Well, then you probably could get a felony. But interestingly enough, we have lots of calls from people that say, I have a DWI and it's a felony or it's a misdemeanor, and how can I get a license with that? I will tell you a funny story because I feel like I'm on fire tonight. I don't know, maybe it's the plant, I don't know. But so we got a call one day from someone, and I researched this. That's how I know this is true, what I'm going to tell you. And the person felt really bad because he was in a car with someone, and that someone had illicit drugs. And I guess the police stopped them. And I guess you're not supposed to have illicit drugs in your car. Even if your person that you're with has them, that's bad for you as the driver, even if you don't know about it. So he got a felony out of it, I believe. So then I told him a little story. And I said, you know, there's things that New York State has in place. And if you read our Hot Off the Press or watch our Hot Off the Press video, you'll also see it, if you don't want to read about it, about how to make a felony go away. Now, the more professional way of saying it is how to make a felony get sealed, which is great because usually the only things that can ever get sealed if you follow legal stuff is if you've done something really horrible as a child or a minor, then things like that get sealed. But now as adults in New York, there's things that you can have sealed. Felonies and misdemeanors can be sealed. And a lot of the country, like lots of people, the numbers are ridiculous. It's like 2 out of 5, 1 out of 5. It's a big number of people that have criminal histories. So a woman, it was a woman's name. I hope it was a woman. Actually, you can't tell anymore these days. But this person was a hairdresser. So she had a license from the Department of State at one point. And she got upset with her client. She got upset with her client. So you're sitting down, right? You're sitting down? Okay. So she stabbed the client in the head with the scissors. Okay? Now that's all I'm going to tell you about that part of the story. But the Department of State gave her a real estate license. So if you can stab your client in the head with scissors as a hairdresser and get a real estate license, I think that if you have a background with any kind of, unless you've done, I don't even know that's so bad to me, I can't even imagine. Because I feel like this person would have a temper, almost anybody should be able to get a real estate license. The big thing that the Department of State wants to see is that you are what we call rehabilitated. They want to make sure that you don't regularly stab people in the head with scissors if you're a hairdresser or whatever you did wrong. You know what I mean? I know that's what I thought. I was the same way. Like April, I had to reread that 4 times. I was just like, how does this happen? So because New York is a right to work law state. Like they want you to not be unemployed. for as much as people joke about New York and our benefits and things, good emojis, Gino. You know, they want you to have a job, and if you're not able to get a professional license as a result of your criminal history, you know, one of the ways that it's hard. Now, interesting, you can stab people in the head with scissors, but if you, I think I don't use the word a lot. Kleptomaniac, that's when you steal things from people, right? If you steal things and you go to jail for it, then it's hard to get a license in real estate because they figure, well, you're going to have access to all these homes and you might steal things when you're at all these homes, you know? So, um, yeah. Um, so that takes me back to misdemeanor. So in New York, you have misdemeanors and felonies. Okay. When you apply for your license, if you have a misdemeanor or felony, you have to disclose it. Please don't not disclose it because if they find out later on, and New York is funny this way. Unlike other states, like if you go to California, you go to Florida, they do an FBI check on you immediately when you apply for your license. That's part of the fee that you're paying. But New York, they randomly check people afterwards, and that's just rumor that they do that. There's no guarantee that they even check you out afterwards. They don't want you to know that, and they never told me this. I just know this. Okay, so long story short is tell the truth, because if they find out anyway, if they find out, and you know, like if you have my kind of luck, they'd find out. That's why you got to tell the truth about everything. They would find out. So it's even worse. It's like a double punishment if they find out after the fact. Okay, and that doesn't matter how many years back. There's people that committed crimes 13 years ago, and if they find out after, it's just a big horrible situation. Okay, so in New York, if you violate the license law, you can get a misdemeanor, which is a maximum 1 year in jail and $1,000 fine. That's a traditional penalty for a misdemeanor. Okay, but there's an extra thing that we're going to see in a little bit, that as a real estate agent, if you say to yourself, I don't care about $1,000 fine because I'm going to make a $50,000 commission. I don't care about 90 days in jail. I'm making a $50,000 commission. Well, there's this extra thing that all of our existing students will probably already know, who've already looped through the program, because we review through the program, is that you will also have to pay a penalty of up to 4 times the amount that you received if you did something illegal by breaking Article 12A, which we haven't covered yet. That's at the bottom of the page. So if you violate the license law as a real estate agent, then you have to pay 4 times the amount you received as part of your penalty. Interestingly enough, on the state exam, they do ask the misdemeanor question quite a bit, and what the fines are, $1,000. And then don't forget, it's a misdemeanor, a fine of up to $1,000, up to a year in jail, and then 4 times the amount received, if anything was received in the transaction. In the middle of the page, we show you the Department of State offices. They're not really walk-in offices. You're not really supposed to just pop in. Lots of times the offices are part-time nowadays because of budget cuts. So everything's on the phone. And then if you want to call the Department of State, now that is not fun times. When you call Department of State, I swear they just sit there and they just look at the phone ringing, and like it's just awful, you know. And then you get into the web, and don't think that you're going to pick up the phone and push 0. Oh no, they already got your number. They're not going to go for 0. Like zero's not your hero. Okay. Matter of fact, that's the fastest way to land up in all like awful place. So you don't do 0. Just plan out, like make sure you're near the bathroom. You may have to use the restroom at some point. It just takes a long time to get. There's no secret on how to get through to them quickly. And interestingly, they treat us just as bad. Like the school Staff, they treat us just as bad as everyone else. So it's not even like they discriminate. They treat everybody awful. Albany number would be the best to call. Yeah, and that 518 area code number is the Albany number. That's actually the only number to call. If you call local, I think they bounce to Albany, actually. Yeah. So the bottom of page 1, we talk about Article 12A. You should know for test purposes that Article 12A is the main body of laws for real estate agents and brokers. That's it. That's all I got to know. Page 2, we talk about real estate brokers and mortgage brokers. Very separate. Just because the word brokers in there doesn't mean that they're similar at all. So real estate brokers are different than real estate salespersons. Those are the only 2 real estate licenses we have in New York. Real estate broker, real estate salesperson. A real estate salesperson cannot exist in New York State without being supervised by a real estate broker. That means sponsored. You have to have someone sponsor you. They're taking responsibility for your actions. That's why real estate is complex, and you just don't want to hire any old person to work for you as a real estate broker. You want to make sure the person's competent, that the person has common sense, which that should be part of competent, but I just want to be really clear. You want to make sure you can trust the person, because they could do think about it. You can do some really awful things if you're an out of control individual. And if you need an example of out of control, just read a few of the newspapers around the world, and you'll see what some of the dumb stuff people do. Like, it's like, oh my God, like the world is nuts, right? So it can happen in your own backyard. So it's important who you have work for you, and a lot of people don't do background checks. I would never have people working for me without doing a background check. And that's not the state does not do a background check. So in the top third of the page 2, we talk about all the different activities that require a real estate license. So make sure you read through that. Brokerage activities in general, brokerage activities is the bringing together of a buyer and seller in the marketplace. Buyer and seller can be interchanged with landlord and tenant as well. So you're bringing people together in essence for some type of compensation. You're expecting some type of compensation for this. And there's also exceptions. You'll see as we go through that there's exceptions to when you have to be licensed. So if you're working on behalf of a court, you're settling in a state, for example. If you're working for a municipality in a particular legal department, they exempt you from having to have a real estate license in those circumstances. Okay? So make sure to read through that. Then we talk about mortgage brokers. So we have mortgage brokers and mortgage bankers. Very different, but very similar. Both are registered by the Department of Financial Services. You should know that for test purposes. When you hear mortgage brokers, mortgage bankers, you should think of the Department of Financial Services. They used to be called the New York State Banking Department. Then they decided to change the name. Great. Same name for 40 years, and then they decided to change the name. So Department of Financial Services is what we call that department now. Mortgage bankers represent their own products. If you go to Bank of America, there's going to be mortgage bankers that represent Bank of America products. If you go to Premium Mortgage, a mortgage company that represents multiple lenders will be a mortgage broker. You should know that for test purposes as well. That tends to show up on a lot of state exams. In the middle of page 2, we talk about the national mortgage licensing system. And in order to work in the mortgage industry, you do need to take a national course. And we do offer that program if you ever want to get involved in that. In the middle of page 2, we look at what does a licensed salesperson actually do? Well, a licensed salesperson, they assist their principal real estate brokers. You're considered an extension of your broker. The bottom of the page, we talk about what licensed associate brokers do. The one thing that I didn't mention when we were answering Gino's question about really why bother becoming an associate broker, it also gives you the ability to just transfer your license into full status. Let's say you don't really want to be active as a real estate agent and you just want to be a property manager. Well, you can just turn your associate broker license into a full brokerage license and represent yourself, and then hire people to work for you, collect rents, and do everything else, and have your own brokerage essentially. Okay. Yep, have your own office essentially. Yep, that's true. Okay. The bottom of page 2, we talk about the fact that you should know that you need 2 years of full-time experience to be a broker. So you work as a salesperson for 2 years in the active brokerage of real estate. That's how you qualify to get a broker's license. You also need points. I'm going to show you the points in a moment. You need to memorize the points as well. So we'll get to that in a moment. Please turn to page 3. So top of page 3, we look at the exemptions to the license law. I reviewed some of that with you, so give that a cursory review. You want to make sure your hands touch every page of the book. I will tell you if something's not important to know, but if I don't tell you it's not important to know, you still should know it. I just can't, we don't read to you, because we're all adults, so reading to you is like, that's not what we do. No college level program should be doing that. So in the top third of the page, we talk about the requirements to obtain a salesperson license. You need to be at least 18 years of age. If you have a misdemeanor or felony, we already discussed that at length. So you need to get a 70% on the school exam and a 70% or better on the state exam. We always encourage our students to take the state exam first. If you take the state exam first, you can take it for an unlimited number of times. The state generally only approves 2 exams per school. So if you take our exam and you don't do well, it kind of hurts your self-confidence. We've learned this over the years. For those of you that have been attending right along, you're probably familiar with what I'm saying. I've kind of mentioned that regularly throughout. So for those of you who are new, just know the goal is for you to take the state exam first. It's $15 each time. You go to eAccess New York, EACCESSNY. We have a great video, like a really Oscar award-winning video that's been uploaded on how to set up an eAccess account. I encourage you to watch it. It'll tell you what to do. It'll talk to you about an ideal email address to use. So we talk about an ideal email address to use as well. All of that's covered in that video. I encourage you to watch that. And that's how you set up your exam with the state. And you get your results 2 days later, and then you take the school exam. And you just contact us to schedule that. And once you're done, you're all set. 8 years is how long your certificate is good for the school. And 2 years, once you pass the state exam, 2 years is how long your results are good for. That's a lot longer than most other states. The bottom of page 3, we talk about the different categories of broker licenses that exist in New York. You want to read through that. You're going to be a class 30. If you become an associate broker, which is really what I call a salesperson in disguise. A salesperson in disguise associate broker is a class 30 license. So that means that in your license number, there's a 30. It used to be 30, and then the first 2 letters of your last name, and then an X number of digits was your license number. And you had that for life. Now they've changed things around a bit. If you have a partnership business, then you would be a class 33. You do need to know the definition of general partner and limited partner. That's in the middle of page 3. Be sure to read through that. One thing you should know, and we review this quite a bit, things show up, just so you don't think I have Alzheimer's as I go through and you're like, well, I saw this before and I saw that before. Why does he keep talking about this over and over again? Real estate textbooks are written so that you keep seeing things over and over because it's a licensing course, and that's just the way they're all written. So the more you see it, just no, if I keep seeing it, you're probably going to really show up on an exam. We don't keep talking about things for no reason. Okay, so you really want to focus on what's the differences between a general partnership and a limited partnership. Well, one big thing is that general partners are involved in day-to-day operations compared to limited partners who are not, who cannot. It's not even are not, it's cannot be involved with day-to-day operations. Okay. Talk about limited liability companies at the bottom of the page. Give that a read through. Then we talk about broker license at the top of page 4. So all that information is provided at the top of page 4. The bottom half of the page, the Department of State maintains a list of approved qualifying continuing education programs. You really shouldn't go to any other school but our school. I mean, why would you? You know we love you. Why would you want to go somewhere else? You know we're going to take care of you. And the important thing is, it's like this is all we do is real estate. If you go somewhere else, well, what happens if you're taking a course that's not state approved? Like this is why we keep you on the phone so long when you call, so we can make sure that you're getting what you need for what you've got as far as a license goes. And then we make sure to bring you up to speed on any changes that you need to be aware of. You don't even know how many people call us and they don't even know about they don't even know that ethics course is now every 3 years. It used to be every 2 years, but it used to be every 4 years. Then they changed it every 2 years. So now it's every 3 years, But these are the things that we tell you because this is all we do. All we do is real estate education. Whether you're a mortgage broker, appraiser, a home inspector, radon technician, a certified energy auditor, a green agent, a negotiation certification that we have called real estate, it's called REMBA, REMBA, Real Estate Excellence in Management, Brokerage, and Agency, all the different things that you can get involved with as a result of getting your license. The more you'll hear about as you get through the program, okay? So bottom of page 4, just give that a cursory review. Hearts are nice. Okay, next page. So the next page is not something you want to get. It's kind of like the same gut feeling you get when you open your mail and you see IRS. And I don't mean the stimulus check that people are waiting for. I mean like IRS in the middle of summer when you already got your refund check. This means that you're getting an education audit. And an education audit means that, so let me tell you something. New York is what we call an audit state. Other states, we send into the Department of whatever regulatory agency regulates their agents. 4A, we're on page 4A right now. What happens is so we let the department that regulates agents in their state know when people finish a course. New York is an audit state. They don't take the information that we send them and input it into anything. They do random audits. So the random audits, they're going to give you a letter like this, and we tend to feel that your chance of getting audited jumps exponentially if you wait until the very, very end. If you're renewing really close to the end, or you renew really, really early. Like New York will let you know about 3 months in advance when your license is going to expire. If you just hurry up and renew right away, we've heard, and it's just because, we take calls from people, we kind of pay attention. It's all we do is real estate education. It's something funny about why those people get audited. Well, it's because New York, they're not dumb. They sit back and they say they were just notified. Everybody knows that real estate agents, I don't want to say are slackers. They're not slackers, but they're procrastinators. As a matter of fact, if you're a procrastinator, you definitely are meant to be a real estate agent, okay? So we always get calls every month of every 25 almost plus years we've been doing this here from people that wait till last minute. And the same people every 2 years. Ask Francine, she'll tell you, every 2 years, they're always cramming last minute. I talk to people and I'm numb to it because I'm just used to people calling up 2 days before their license expires. But we have a program that you can take. You can do it in 2 days. It's so stress-free, no tests. It includes everything that you need. And we have so much repeat business because of that and the fact that we provide great customer service. But, waiting till last minute, it raises your heart rate. It's not good for stress. Even a plant won't make a difference to you if you wait till last minute. So you really should not wait till last minute to do your continuing ed. It's only 22 and a half hours. That's all it is. You have to do your continuing ed before you can renew your first license. So the page 4B reflects, um, page 4B reflects what happens after the investigator gets back the results of the request to investigate you. And the fact that the person, they checked off the box here, did you, were you exempt, and did you do your continuing ed and all that? And it says here, a recent audit determines one or more of the following: that you failed to provide satisfactory proof that you completed an approved continuing ed course. You know what's funny is, I always say funny, but I don't mean funny. I mean like, wow, it's crazy. People have actually taken certificates and made fake certificates and submitted it to the state. Well, we must get calls about once every 3-4 months, maybe more frequently, from the Department of State, and they say, did you change your certificates? And then we're like, no, we didn't issue that. Like, people got a word that I can't say. I'll let you, it's not squares, but I'll let you use your imagination. Like, how can you, like, how dumb are you to make a fake certificate and you're being audited? Like, you really think the state's so dumb? But anyways, they do that, and then they get in huge trouble. Like, I wonder if it's more trouble than the woman that stabbed someone in the head. I don't know, but it's just out of control. So on the next page, they have a thing called a consent order. So a consent order is where the department, it's kind of like a plea deal that they do in criminal court, and it's where they say, okay, look, there's so many people like you that are breaking the rules like this, that instead of us wasting money on shots fired, there's so many people breaking this rule of education. Like, at one time, 50% of agents were lying. Making mistakes, saying that they did their continuing ed when they didn't. 50% at one time. That's how high the numbers were. So they were charging $1,000, literally $1,000. Bam, 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 bam. $1,000 every time someone said, yes, I did my continuing ed. Then they audit the person and they didn't do it. $1,000. I don't even know why we should have a budget surplus, like in New York, from all the fines that they've charged real estate agents. Okay, so now we're going to look at page 6. There's a number of court cases that bring up really interesting topics. Stambovsky versus Ackley. This is a real interesting case. This is a case that if I would have answered Gino's question earlier, it would have completely ruined, it would have stole the thunder for my plans for you this evening, okay? So what I would like to do is I would like you to watch a video that I have prepared for you on this court case. And then I want to talk about stigmatized properties as a result of it's like the only Ghostbusters case in the nation. Okay, so it's famous and it's a New York thing, go figure, So what I'm going to do is very eloquently, I'm going to we'll call this video equipment. I'm going to move the video equipment so that we can get you queued up for the little segment that you're going to watch and see what you think. And then we're going to talk about it.
Is that nobody can know for sure, but that hasn't stopped one house from being declared legally haunted. The house is number 1 Lavender Place, Indiac, New York, and it was declared haunted in the early 1990s. In court. But who is being taken to court, you may ask? Were they trying to give an eviction notice for their allegedly spooky house guest? Well, no. The story is a lot more convoluted than that, and has now become one of the most bizarre legal disputes in modern history. It all began in the 1960s, when a couple called Helen and George Ackley decided they wanted to buy the house. It is a 5,000 square foot property, and very desirable. Looking at photos of it, it's easy to see why they bought it. It was built around 1890 and is right on the edge of the Hudson River, and has a grand total of 18 rooms. Its potential made its status as a fixer-upper more than worth it. It also happened that while the 7,000 residents of the small American town knew all about the alleged hauntings at Lavender Place, the Ackleys were not told this before they moved in. You have probably all heard of the Amityville Horror, a house situated at the now famous address 112 Ocean Avenue, where the family who lived there were terrorized by the specters of those who came before, and they then very quickly moved out and made a great deal of money selling their story. Unlike those people, the Ackleys stayed in their house, despite reporting some very harrowing ghost stories during their time there. Helen Ackley herself even got an article published in Reader's Digest in 1977 called Our Haunted House on the Hudson. Once they learned the truth, they didn't exactly keep quiet about it, and it seemed like the ghosts who lived there were actually friendly. Here is a quote from Helen Ackley in an interview in 1990. He was sitting in midair, watching me paint the ceiling in the living room, rocking back and forth. I was on an 8-foot stepladder. I asked if he approved of what we were doing to the house, if the colours were to his liking. He smiled and nodded his head. In her earlier article, she described the ghosts as gracious, thoughtful, and occasionally frightening, and thoroughly entertaining. Our ghosts have continued to delight us. Reportedly, their young daughter Cynthia's bed used to shake every morning to get her out of bed to go to school on time. They during spring break when she would inform the phantoms loudly that she didn't have to get up early the following day. And when she did that, she was allowed to sleep in. Helen always thought that the house had around 3 ghosts living there, and that they all belonged to the era of the Revolutionary War. And there are even stories about the children being given gifts for small rings and toys. Perhaps the spookiest ones come from a man named Mark Kavanagh, who eventually married the Ackley daughter Cynthia. He wrote in another article from 2010 called The Ghosts of Nyack that he had 2 mental encounters, one where he grew increasingly paranoid, hearing whispers coming from the empty dining room when he was in the house alone, and another when the ghost of a woman came into his bedroom in the middle of the night and sat at his side for a few minutes before drifting away again peacefully. These stories became so prominent in the area that it became part of the town's walking ghost tour in a place which already boasted quite a prestigious haunted history, it being just down the road from the legendary town of Sleepy Hollow, as featured in the short stories of Washington Irving. It was over 20 years after they moved in that the family decided to move out, and this was actually because of rising taxes in the area rather than because of the ghosts, and because with George Ackley's recent death, his widow could no longer afford to live in the area. I'm sure that if Helen Ackley could have taken the ghosts with her when she moved, she would have. Reluctantly, Helen put the house on the market at an asking price of $650,000, which attracted Jeffrey and Patrice Stavkovsky, a couple from New York City. Jeffrey worked on Wall Street in the bond business, while Patrice was pregnant and looking for somewhere quieter to settle down and raise their child. The 18-room Victorian house on a view of the river apparently appealed to them, just like it had appealed to Helen and George Ackley years previously. The Stavkovskys decided they wanted the house and put down a down payment of around $32,500. Strangely though, Helen, who had spent the last dozen or so years telling everybody she could get her hands on that her house was one of the most haunted places in America, kept quiet about her ghostly friends when she was trying to sell Jeffrey Stavkovsky the house, and fell to a nosy neighbor to inform the couple of the house's history, at which point they decided not to take the house after all, and didn't show up to the final meeting where they would pay Ackley the rest of the money. Jeffrey later claimed in court that he didn't believe in the paranormal himself, but that he worried about his pregnant wife's peace of mind when she would often be in the house alone. And that was the main reason behind their decision to rescind the deal. The failure to show rendered the entire agreement null and void. But complications arose because the house was still in escrow. Because of this, the Stavkovskys said they had a right for their deposit to be returned to them, but Ackley refused to pay it back. The Stavkovskys sued, and the Supreme Court eventually heard the case. In terms of real estate, this is an interesting problem. It often falls to the discretion of the estate agent and the property's current residents whether or not they need to inform any potential buyers or tenants about if a house is haunted. They're sometimes required to disclose any information that might affect the decision of the buyers, but because nobody can be sure whether ghosts even exist or not, it's really up to them whether they let people know or not. And they can always just lie later and say they've never noticed any ghosts, since it's not exactly the type of thing you could get evidence of easily, and certainly not evidence that would stand up in court. With that in mind, how did it happen that one Lavender place was ruled by the Supreme Court themselves as legally haunted? Well, it turns out that because Helen Ackley published so many materials during her residency claiming that the house was haunted, that the truth didn't actually matter, because the stories themselves had most certainly affected the value of the property. She was very nearly found guilty of fraudulent representation by a trial court, but the court sided with her realtor, saying that there was no legal obligation to disclose the house's haunted status to the potential buyers. Because of this, Stambovsky was not allowed to sue for damages. But when the case went to the appellate branch of the Supreme Court, they declared that Stambovsky was allowed the remedy of contract rescission against Ackley, because the most meticulous inspection and search would not reveal the presence of poltergeists and the premises or unearth the property's ghoulish reputation in the community. They decided that Ackley had an unfair advantage of Stambovsky's ignorance of the property and the location, and eventually he was awarded half of the down payment he originally made, which is still better than nothing for such a ridiculous case. Stambovsky versus Ackley received national publicity, however, and it meant that people who desperately wanted to live in a haunted house flocked to the area and tried to buy the home for themselves. By 1991, Ackley had finally managed to sell it, and had achieved her dream of moving to Florida to escape the harsh winters of New York, and it was sold in January 2016 for over $1.7 million.
I'm spooked. Spooked to the bone. All right. Good. I like scary stuff. It's crazy. So let me explain to you how that's considered a stigmatized property. So stigmatized property is a property where something happened to it that is less than desirable. Someone dies at a property, no matter how they die, whether they kill themselves, whether they just die naturally, anything can stigmatize a property. This is how it works. This is New York stigmatized property rules, okay? So New York stigmatized property rules. If a person comes up, let's say you have an open house, and someone comes up to you and they say, has anyone ever died at this property? It doesn't matter if you know or not. You have to tell them that in New York, there's a specific process. You have to put it in writing, Mr. Buyer. You have to put in writing, and then what you do is you give it to the seller. Now, if you're not the seller's agent, then you don't give it to the seller, you give it to the seller's agent, who will then give it to the seller. Then it's on the seller to respond to you. Now, if you're a buyer's agent and you're working with people who moved in from out of town, and there's public information, like there was this, like the Ackley, Stambovsky and Ackley that we just watched. If you have a copy of that Reader's Digest article and they're looking at that house, you can say, oh, there's information here you might want to take a look at. Because you remember who your client is. Your client is not that seller who you're not representing, it's your buyers, if you're a buyer's agent. You've got to put the buyer's needs, wants, and interests above and beyond everyone else's, including your own. That's what you do. So it's okay for you to disclose public information that you're aware of, for sure, but be sure that you're sure. Like, don't just pass rumors along. Like, if it's documented in the news, obviously we talk a lot about fake news nowadays, but it's very important that, like, you let them know, here's what I saw in the public domain. That's a nice way of saying it. You share with them information that's in the public domain, and then they can make a decision. And then if they say, you know what, I'm making an offer on this house, but I need to know, then you follow the process that I just described. And yeah, I would definitely Google any property and make sure that I know anything about. I would Google it and I would put that specific address in there. And yeah, I mean, that's all you can do really. Google's made it a lot easier. If the seller does not respond to the written request, can we advise our client to go to? First of all, this is so rare. Like, it's so rare that's going to happen that I wouldn't go crazy over it. But you can give them any kind of advice that you want. Usually, though, the best thing to do is say, I would talk to my lawyer, talk to your lawyer about it. That's usually that's the most safe advice. Because you have to remember that you're an extension of your broker. Your broker might not want you to say that. So instead of asking me, do you think it's a good idea to say, can you go to the police department? I would suggest that. Ask your broker if he or she wouldn't mind if you said that. Ask your broker how you'd want them to handle, how would you want me to handle this scenario if it happens? I would say, don't whip out the stigmatized property question on your interview because they might think you're a little crazy. So you might want to wait till after you're hired and then make sure there's way more important things to talk to your broker about because it's so rare that this will happen. But I would say to you that for the most part, just the process that I described though is not well defined. First of all, you're not going to be tested on it. We're not going to be tested on the fact that the process of how the steps that you go through, we're not tested on that. For some of the minutia that you're tested on, they might as well test you on it. I don't know why they don't. But that's the process that you go through, just to stay out of legal trouble yourself. Say the owner was elderly and they passed away in the home. As a buyer's agent, if you know, should you tell your client? So as a buyer's agent, and if they did pass away in the home, how do you know? Are you their friend? Are you their neighbor? How do you know is what I want to know. If the seller does not respond to the written request, can we advise? Because we think that what if it was a drug? Yeah, meth labs are problems around the country, And I would encourage you to ask your office manager, when you associate with an office, say, this is what I learned in school, but how would you like us to handle it? Obviously, when it comes up. Offices have office meetings, usually on Tuesdays, sometimes Wednesdays, and they talk about new listings. And interestingly enough, these things tend to come up when there's a new listing. Sometimes the listing agent will say, oh, and by the way, this is the property. And for those of you that know the neighborhood, you might know that this is where, Sally shot John. And it's like, wow, okay, now I know way too much information. And that would be a good time, especially because you're new, and say, you know what, we learned that this is the way to do it. You might be shocked, but the information you share with them on the way you learned it will probably blow their mind, because I guarantee you that they think they just need to disclose it. And that's all good. It's all good to disclose until someone realizes that wasn't right, and then they get sued. And then you get sued as the brokers that represented the property. See, that's the problem. If nobody knows you're breaking the law, then no one has an issue with it until someone realizes that, well, wait, I didn't like that agent, or that agent didn't do good by me, or they didn't sell it for as much as they could have. And then they're talking to a lawyer, and then the lawyer says, wait, what? They were telling everybody that someone died there? That's not right. And then that's how things happen, that's like the progression of how you find out that someone didn't understand the law. No, actually, page 6. We want page 6 next, because we were looking at court cases involving disclosing.
So you're going to read through that, read through the other ones there. You'll see let the buyer beware. The moment you hear let the buyer beware, you should think to yourself, caveat emptor, that's Latin. Latin, caveat emptor is Latin for let the buyer beware. And so you want to go through that. It turns out that that court case that's referenced there, you don't have to know court cases. You're not tested on court cases. You're tested on concepts that are related to court cases, okay? It turns out that if the seller was actively involved in trying to conceal a defect in the home, then it's not pretty at all. It's absolutely not pretty. And if you watch the video that we've uploaded on how to limit your liability in real estate, for those of you that are new here tonight, how to limit your liability in real estate, it's on our exam playlist. If you can include stigmatized property rules on there so nobody can ever say that you didn't explain to them the rules. Perfect opportunity, okay? And that also includes the fact that if there's something wrong with the property, you know, a lot of times people say, well, if I'm gonna have a home inspector look at the property, then what's the big deal? What's the big deal with me, you know, like worrying about something being, well, because home inspectors are representing the buyer, and home inspectors have all kinds of exclusions in their home inspection because New York has a premise for home inspectors. We teach lots of home inspection at the school, and the premise is you're only responsible for what you can see. That's it. You're only responsible for what you can see. If it's hidden in the wall or it's hidden in the ceiling, well, you're not responsible. Okay? So that's a protection that's written into the law for home inspectors. But when you're listing a property, you're supposed to know it a lot more than just very casually. You're expected to look at the property and something doesn't look right. If you inspect a property and there's a big bulging wall, you can't just say nothing about it. You have to ask. You can't assume they're going to just tell you why that wall's bulging. Like, you have to ask questions. When things don't look right, or let me put it like this. When you get that gut feeling that something isn't right, don't ignore it. It took me till I was almost 28 before I stopped saying, you know what? Don't ignore that little thing inside of you that's saying something isn't right here. Don't ignore it. In real estate, that's your best friend. You want to fine tune and hone in on that gut feeling of yours. All right, so read through the rest of that. I want to talk about some legal tidbits at the bottom half of page 6, okay? So there is that first bullet point. Department of State can institute an additional penalty of 4 times the amount received if money is received during a violation of Article 12A, the license law. So be aware of that. You should know that New York's highest court is the Court of Appeals. Please know that for test purposes. Again, read through all the bullet points. These are all really important. You should know the definition of a tort. A tort occurs when someone deliberately or through carelessness causes harm or loss to another person or to their property. Vicarious liability is a little further down. The minute you hear being responsible for the actions of another, we're talking about the term vicarious liability. We'll get into that more as we progress through the program, but please read through that definition.
So this here is a salesperson application. Now, your application, you will not use this paper for. They still make it available for various reasons, but you're going to be doing your application online, ladies and gentlemen. But I want you to read this application. Read it in its entirety. There's some useful things there. If you have a question about anything, let us know. But just read through all of this. Every time you take the exam, you pay $15. You pay that through your e-access account. And when you get your real estate license, you're not tested on this either, but you're going to get a unique ID number, UID they call it. And it starts with a 1040. Think of your tax return, 1040, and then a bunch of zeros and whatever your number is. And you'll have that for the rest of your life as a real estate agent in New York State. Okay. So here is the last part of the application. Okay. Your pocket card. Okay, so you might not have heard this term before. A pocket card is proof that your pocket card is proof of your license. It looks like a driver's license, but all over it, it says this is not a New York State form of government ID. So, but it looks like a driver. They actually pull your picture from your driver's license to give you a pocket card as proof that you're a real estate agent. Okay. Now, this top paragraph under miscellaneous items, I want to share with you. That this was on a recent exam, and therefore you'll see it on our cheat sheet. So, as I see questions come up that I see all the time, that are showing up all the time on the state exam, I want to bring it to your attention in real time as well. When you get a New York license, it's good for 2 years. You have to do 22 and a half hours to keep your license active. Once 2 years passes, and if you don't do your 22 and a half hours of credit, you have a 2-year probationary period, ladies and gentlemen, 2 years that you can wait and do your continuing education. But if you don't do it by the end of the 2nd year of your probationary period, so that means that if your license expires December 31st of 2020, and you don't do your continuing education, you have until December 31st of 2022. And if you don't do it by then, you have to retake the state exam. Does anyone here know how long your course is good for? So the certificate from the course is good for a certain period of time. Anybody know how long? What I'm looking for is 8 years. Your course is good for 8 years. So if you let your license, there we go. So it is 8 years, yeah. So if you let your license lapse and then you decide you want to renew, you want to get a license again for whatever reason, if 8 years has passed, you're going to have to retake this course. Okay, just so you're aware of that. All right, so read through these bullet points at the bottom. We talk about apartment sharing agents, apartment information vendors. Know that Article 12B, now though I wouldn't make a flashcard up for this, but it might help you as a multiple choice throwaway option. Home Inspection Professional Licensing Act is part of Article 12B. Remember Article 12A, you got a bunch of articles now. You have 3, right? 3 different articles. You got Article 9A for subdivision and development, Article 78 for appeal, a judicial appeal, and
So I'm pausing this for you to write down. So ladies and gentlemen, if you have flashcards, you should write down on one side of your flashcard Article 9A, and then on the reverse side, subdivision and development. Then you pull out another flashcard, Article 12A, then on the back side of that flashcard, main body of New York real estate laws. Then you pull out a third one, Article 12B. On the reverse side, you put home inspection licensing laws. Then the final one that shows up quite a bit on the state and school exam is Article 78. That's a judicial appeal. And the way you use this, ladies and gentlemen, is as follows. When you're reading a question and you see the words blah, 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 then all of a sudden judicial appeal shows up, a little bell goes off in your head and you say, oops, I know what that is. That's an Article 78 proceeding. So then you look at the 4-choice, multiple choice, you pick it, and you move on to the next question. Then 4 questions down, you see blah, 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 subdivision and development. That bell goes off and you say, oops, I know that one. That's Article 9A. Tell me in the chat box if you get what I'm talking about, because I cannot see the looks on your faces to know this. In the classroom, I'd be staring at you right now to see if I have that clueless look or you're getting it.
Article 12B, Home Inspection Licensing Act. And of course, Article 12A is the main body of law, so you got 4 now. Article 12A is the main body of laws for real estate agents and brokers. And please know that an apartment information vendor's license is good for 1 year. That used to be a popular question. They don't seem to be asking too much. And then we talk a little bit about real estate broker responsibilities. Now, you've heard me say a number of times this evening that brokers are responsible for supervising the activities of the agents associated with him or her. technically, they don't test on this, they should, and they used to, but brokers must have a sign that's displayed, and we say readable from the sidewalk. If it's a freestanding building, if it's inside of an office building with multiple offices, then it needs to be on the play card in the lobby of the office building that it's in. That says the words licensed real estate broker. So read through this. And then at the bottom of page 12, I want to let you know agency disclosure forms. Agency disclosure forms, all records, again, ladies and gentlemen, all records must be kept for 3 years.
So that should be a flashcard, ladies and gentlemen. Like you should put on one side of the flashcard 3 years, because that's the answer. Then on the reverse side, you want to put how long do documents and records have to be kept for? And that's like when you're an open house register, a listing agreement, a purchase offer. Even if the listing doesn't sell, you need to keep that documentation for 3 years.
So when you have a listing agreement, when someone's going to list their home with you, when they sign an agency disclosure form, a property condition disclosure form, any paperwork, open house registers must be kept for 3 years. Any paperwork. Now, that's even if the deal doesn't go through. If someone lists their home with you and then they change their mind and it never sells, or they take it off the market, you have to keep that paperwork for 3 years. So please know that for test purposes. Department of State at the top of the next page, the Department of State reserves the right to audit your records to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do and doing your forms properly and timely. So that's what we talk about in this section. We define co-brokered sales. So if you're from Hunt Real Estate and Howard Hanna has a buyer for your property, that's considered a co-brokered sale. But if Hunt Real Estate is the listing agent and a buyer goes through Hunt to purchase it, maybe from a different Hunt office, that's considered an in-house sale. In-house sale. Another thing I want to bring to your attention, especially if you're new this evening, and again, welcome. We're so happy that you're with us through the program. You do need to know that you need to know broker fast facts. If it says broker fast facts, you need to know it. It's not just for brokers, although it tends to show up on broker exams as well. You should know that independent contractors who are paid more than $600 a year must receive a 1099. Read through all these bullet points, but I want to focus on a few of them right now. Doesn't mean the other ones aren't important. Definitely give them a cursory review. Like I wouldn't make recordation of closing documents a form of constructive notice. I wouldn't make a flashcard for that. But anything in bold, I would make a flashcard for, like flip taxes. When you hear flip taxes, oh, time for a flashcard. Flip taxes on one side, and then you turn it over, you flip it over, right? And you're going to put taxes on co-ops. Co-op or cooperative is a property type that we'll talk about, I'm pretty sure this week, actually. Okay? GFE, good faith estimate. GFE, good faith estimate. And what you need to know about that is it must be delivered, and that's another bullet point after flip taxes, within 3 days after completion. So when you meet with a mortgage broker as a buyer of a home, they need to provide you a good faith estimate within 3 days. That shows up frequently on the state exam. People have been seeing it. We have reverse annuity mortgages. Got to know what that is. Trigger word. Reverse annuity mortgage on one side, flip it over, and you're going to put loans from senior citizens. Now you can put a little bit more too. Most people seem to remember the extra stuff though. The extra stuff is this. When the bank pays you money, okay, so when the bank pays you money in order to live at the property, so you own your property, you apply for a reverse mortgage, and you get money every month. That's called a reverse annuity mortgage. Most people say, well, why doesn't everybody do that? Well, it's complicated. First of all, you only apply for a reverse annuity mortgage because you don't qualify for a home equity loan or another mortgage. Usually it's you have an income issue. You're not earning income, or you're not earning enough to qualify for the loan amount. So that's the main reason. And plus there's other reasons as far as, then it cuts into the equity that you might want to leave your children upon your demise. So that's another thing you want to be aware of. But that's what you need to know for test purposes. In all the years I sold real estate, and even, I'm still actively involved. I'm still buying and selling properties, I'm appraising properties, I'm talking to people who are, working actively as real estate agents on a regular basis. Trigger word is senior citizen. There's only one other question that deals with senior citizen, and senior citizen exemptions. So it's a good trigger word. It's a good trigger word for reverse annuity mortgage.
So when you hear me say trigger word, I must be talking about what, ladies and gentlemen? Can somebody tell me in the chat what I must be talking about when I say the word trigger word? You should be thinking of doing what? Just so that I know we're all on the same page. It might take you a couple classes to get the hang of this. Thank you, Isaiah. You are a scholar and a high-class gentleman.
Shared appreciation. You want to know shared appreciation? You want to know package mortgage? Convertible, they haven't been asking much about, but it's a multiple choice throwaway option. So please make a flashcard for convertible mortgage. Feasibility study is another popular one. Detailed statistical analysis. So the flashcard I would make up for a feasibility study is a detailed statistical analysis.
Excellent. Good job with flashcards for everyone. Thank you for participating. We're going to continue now.
So here we go. First, the lender has to determine the loan amount. They'll use a formula set out by FHA that takes into account the value of the home, the age of the borrowers, and the current interest rates to determine the loan amount. Usually it's between 40 and 60% of the home value, depending on your age. Once they know what you qualify for, then they'll want to know how you want to take your money. The closing costs of the loan will be rolled into the loan itself. This means you'll have a starting balance equal to those costs plus any other funds you decide to take at closing. Perhaps you have your home paid off and don't need to have all of the loan money right now. You could choose to take your loan proceeds in the form of tenure, which is a monthly payment for as long as you live in the home. In this scenario, on the first of every month, you will receive tax-free funds from the lender. Each month, you would also receive a mortgage statement. It'll show you the prior month's loan balance, the amount of payment to you, the amount of interest and insurance charged, and the new loan balance. Or perhaps you'd like to have all of your loan funds ready and available as you need them in a line of credit. In this scenario, you would receive a statement each month from the lender showing the existing loan balance and the amount of funds previously available in the line of credit. The statement would also show any withdrawals you made from the line of credit the prior month and the new available line of credit. One of the coolest features of this particular scenario is that the line of credit on the reverse mortgage grows over time. The amount available to you in the line of credit grows at a rate equal to the rate charged on the loan itself plus 1.25%. So reverse mortgage line of credit in the amount of $100,000 today would be over $104,000 next year. It's a great incentive to limit your withdrawals, building up that line of credit over time so that when you're 70, 80, or 90 and really need money for home health care or other emergencies, you have more to draw from. Another scenario would be to take all your money right now to make a major purchase, like a second residence or investment property. The last and most popular scenario is to combine those different payout options, perhaps taking some funds at closing to pay off other debts and leaving the rest in a line of credit. It's your choice. I've had clients who choose some cash, some line of credit, and a 10-year payment as well. It's up to you. If you currently have a traditional or forward mortgage, you can use the reverse mortgage to pay it off. In fact, it's required by the lenders that any existing mortgage on the property must be paid off with the reverse loan proceeds.
Next, we see a broker application is a lot longer. And the reason why the broker application is longer, ladies and gentlemen, is because we have to show proof of your experience. So what we would encourage you to do is make sure you read through this because there'll be some good information in there. And if you want to ask me whether like this or that sounds like a test question, and should we memorize it? I'll let you know. Let me know, like tomorrow after you go through this. But just give this a cursory review. That's why we really do have most of this chapter covered. But moving through it here. Okay, so I'm going to read all of this over. And you might not know this too. They don't test on it too much, but if you are the point, oh, that's a good question, Melissa. Are the points on the exam? They used to be, they haven't been lately. So you kind of take a chance if you want to memorize it or not. And that's actually what we're going to talk about next. Let me take a look at real estate broker application. Notice the A1. So you got A1, right? And there's a A1 and a B1 and a C1, I believe. I think it's ABC, right? So what you need to know, ladies and gentlemen, is this 3,500 points. 3,500 points. That's how many experience points you need as you working as a real estate agent to qualify for a broker's license. So you would have 2 years of experience, and then within 2 years, have you earned at least 3,500 points? If you haven't, then you have to wait till you get that time in. Now, the most they go back is 5 years. So if you earned the experience over 5 years ago, it won't count. So all of that you want to keep in mind if you ever do want to go and get your own broker's license. And then you don't have to memorize, like, I don't know if this was part of Melissa's question or not, but like, do you have to memorize that you get 250 points for every house, every single family home or condo or co-op? That they don't test you on. It's the big numbers, okay? So if you're qualifying for a broker's license for the sale of real estate, the brokerage of real estate, it's 3,500 points. Then you go to Schedule B1, and that's what we call the equivalency experience, the equivalency experience list. So if you worked as a mortgage broker, appraiser, property manager, then you follow B1. Okay, so A1 is a brokerage of real estate. B1 is all the weird stuff that's not the brokerage of real estate. Okay, and then you need to remember that hopefully you were working legally as a property manager. And if you worked as a property manager for your own property, that counts as long as you get enough points. Many people don't get enough points because now you've got 3 years of experience you have to show, 5,250 points that you need, and then you need the 3-year time frame. So even if you get the points in 2 years, you still have to wait till you get to 3 years. Schedule C. If they worked as a real estate agent and they did property management, then a little bit of A and a little bit of B gives you C, and that's what you want to know. C is the schedule you use, which is always 3 years, and it's always 5,250 on the points. Okay. Read through that little box, the December 2014 box, when we talk about sprinkler systems and things. Read through that. And then on the next page, I want to talk about some important terms. Please know that you can't commingle money. When someone gives you a deposit for a house or an earnest money deposit, earnest money is good faith. So, flashcard moment, earnest money deposit, good faith. Good faith is your trigger word for earnest money deposit. So make sure you know that. Earnest money is your trigger word for good faith, your good faith deposit. So commingling is when you take that deposit and you put it in your operating account where you pay your bills. If you're the broker, okay, you're Joe the broker, ABC Real Estate. You take the money from the buyers of homes through your company. You put it in the same account where you pay the electric and the gas and everything else, right? That's commingling. That's illegal. The next step after commingling, ladies and gentlemen, is called conversion. Conversion is when you actually spend someone else's money and it doesn't benefit the person. Please know the difference between the two. It's like a state exam favorite question. Make sure to read the balance of this on your own. Please know the definition of a blind ad. A blind ad is an ad that when someone's reading it, they don't even know that it's placed by a real estate company or a real estate agent or licensee. Blind ads only contain telephone numbers, so that's why we say it's blind. Whenever you advertise a property, it always has to be clear that you're a real estate agent associated with whatever company you're with. So make sure to read through that. The bottom of page 22, we talk about the fact that you need the owner's permission. You need the owner's permission to put up a for sale sign on a property.
Page 23. So you're not tested, ladies and gentlemen, on this 40,000 per violation. If you contact people who are on the do not call list, technically you could be fined up to $40,000 per person. If you think that you're ever going to call, randomly call people, like, well, let's say you list a house on Evergreen Drive. You used to be able to go and look up all the other people on the street and contact them by phone and say, hey, I just listed the house on Evergreen Drive, so tell them whatever the address is. Do you know anybody who's thinking about buying or selling a home? And this way, if they have a relative or they have a child that they want to move into the neighborhood and might want to buy a house to be closer to their parents or whatever, it would be a great way to get business quick. But the do not call registry, if people are listed on there, you cannot call them. So just be aware, that's what we're talking about in terms of this 40,000 per violation, right? I really don't think it's enforced very well because you'd be hearing about people getting fined left and right. Like, I still want to know, do you still get calls for the car warranty for the car you haven't owned in 8 years? I know I do, and it's very annoying. And I'm on every list to not call me, and I still get calls.
Hi, I'm Laura Kim, an attorney at the Federal Trade Commission. Millions of people limit the number of telemarketing calls they get by registering their phone numbers on the National Do Not Call Registry. If you market your products or services by phone, or if someone has hired you to handle their telemarketing for them, it's a good idea to know about the Do Not Call provisions of the telemarketing sales rule. The Do Not Call provisions apply to telemarketing calls for products or services, but not to calls from political organizations, charities, and companies conducting bona fide phone surveys. There's also an exemption for calls to customers with whom you have an established business relationship. These are customers you've done business with in the past 18 months, or customers who have submitted an inquiry or application to you in the past 3 months. The FTC enforces the telemarketing sales rule in compliance with the Do Not Call provisions. Although most legitimate companies comply with Do Not Call, the FTC still gets complaints about companies that don't. So what do you need to know to comply? First, hiring a company to handle your telemarketing doesn't let you off the hook in terms of compliance. Your business and the company you hire both are responsible for compliance, and both could be subject to civil penalties of up to $16,000 per violation. Second, the established business relationship exemption expires after 18 months. If you're calling a former customer based on an established business relationship, make sure the relationship is current. Third, a person may ask you not to call again, and once you get this request, even if it's from a former customer, you're required to honor it. And fourth, if you're telemarketing your products or services, or paying a company to telemarket on your behalf, you're required to pay certain fees. Your payment supports the Do Not Call registry and gives you access to it for 12 months. How much do you pay? There's information on how to figure out your fee at telemarketing.donotcall.gov. That's the big picture on compliance. For details, visit the Business Center at business.ftc.gov.
Taking action for you, the do not call list is not working for many people, especially when it comes to robo-dialers looking to cheat you out of your money. Tonight, I-Team reporter Jackie Calloway is questioning state and federal regulators and the phone companies to find out what's being done to protect you.
Your final notice.
Just keeps calling.
That who's filing a lawsuit against you.
Keeps calling.
It's called a simple and easy way you can apply directly with a lender.
A growing nuisance, bugging an entire nation.
I've added us several times to the do not call list.
The federal do not call list contains 226 million numbers.
I'll call them and I'll yell at them, and try to get them to stop.
Still, last year, consumers filed 5 million complaints over do not call violations.
Hello,
Minutes after we arrived at Marlene Vertock's home, a robo-dialer rang.
Todd with the fulfillment package.
One of 5 telemarketing dialers who call daily.
They've just been slamming us with phone calls.
Still does what it's intended to do.
Alan Parkinson heads up the do not call list in Florida. He says the registry, now 24 years old, was created as a tool for legitimate telemarketers, not scammers.
All this does is combat legitimate companies who are going to check that list.
For them to refer to that list and not call those people who are registered on it.
The Federal Trade Commission has fined violators more than $1 billion. Still, the problem continues to grow.
For every action that we bring and for every operation that we shut down, unfortunately, there's 5 more operations behind that sending out unwanted calls.
State and national regulators say the phone companies have real power to provide wide-scale relief from the incessant ringing.
The phone industry needs to keep working on better blocking solutions available for their subscribers.
Feeling the pressure, phone companies last year formed a robocall strike force. AT&T, Verizon, Frontier are among 30 companies on that force. Verizon tells us it's trying out a new service that will help identify robocallers, and AT&T has come up with something called AT&T Call Protect. It actually blocks fraud calls before they get to your phone.
I think the phone companies or somebody should stop this.
While the phone companies work on wide-reaching solutions, we found certain free tools and apps that block unwanted calls from both cell phones and landlines.
I added my phone number and I hit enable.
Meg Hader estimates that NomoRobo.com blocked 100 bad calls in the period of 2 weeks.
And it has changed my life.
And the apps, Mr. Number and True Caller, will either notify you the call is suspect or disconnect before your cell phone even rings.
Oh man, it's wonderful and it's free.
Anytime a call comes in that you don't know, don't answer it. Just saying hello or pushing the opt-out prompt may result in more calls. And be sure to call your own carrier to find out what, if anything, they're doing to resolve the robo-dialing epidemic.
Do you still get calls for the car warranty for the car you haven't owned in 8 years? I know I do, and it's very annoying. And I'm on every list to not call me, and I still get calls. Second paragraph. Oh, Teresa does. Okay, so I'm not the only one. I feel better. Sorry, Teresa. So as we continue here, I want you to know that once you get your license, ladies and gentlemen, the words licensed real estate salesperson has to follow your name on any real estate related documents. I know, right, Kyle? It should be higher. So licensed real estate, so if you're going to lease a property, if you're purchasing a property, the world has to be put on notice that they're dealing with a professional, that they're dealing with Isaiah Burke, licensed real estate salesperson. Kyle Genovese, licensed real estate salesperson. That's what you use for any documents so that the world knows that you're an expert in the field. Okay. As we continue down the page, we're doing on time, we're doing good, okay. Compensation, we talk about when you earn your commission. Even if you go out of state? No, probably not then, because it's only a New York State thing. And you won't be tested on that either. Ready, willing, and able buyer. That's when you technically earn a commission. But in actuality, listing agreements only require that a commission is paid once title to the property transfers. I want to talk about this affidavit of entitlement. That's a testable item that was on the last state exam, ladies and gentlemen. When a commission isn't paid, sometimes commissions aren't paid. It's very rare. Like all the years I sold real estate, I was always paid. Most people are always paid. But you know, if you're in the business long enough, you might run across a situation where the seller just doesn't want to pay, and there's nothing you can do about it. Like, keep this a secret, ladies and gentlemen, just between us. there is no mechanics lien like there is for, like, if you hire a plumber to come and fix a leak and you don't pay the plumber can put a mechanics lien against your property. An electrician, they can put a lien against your property, which means you can't sell the property until that lien is satisfied. But a real estate commission is not part of the lien law. They've always talked about changing it, but they never have. So just be aware that you can file an affidavit of entitlement, which doesn't do anything. The only thing an affidavit of entitlement does is puts the world on notice that the owners of this property, it's because they didn't pay the commission. Okay? And it kind of protects your fellow brethren so that they know that, hey, you know what, these people are in trouble, they don't pay their commissions. Okay? But it doesn't happen enough. Thank God it doesn't happen enough. So know what that is. Read the items at the bottom of 23, nothing shocking there. I also want to make sure you know what a kickback is. This has been on the state exam too. A kickback is return a part of the commission as gifts, money, or other consideration. This is worth a flashcard, ladies and gentlemen. So on one side of your flash card, you put kickback. On the reverse side, you put return of part of the commission. That's all you need. You trigger words. When you do flashcards, ladies and gentlemen, you should not be writing long, long paragraphs. That is not an effective way to do flashcards. Okay? Let's talk about preparation of legal documents. So it turns out that a Rochester real estate firm, actually, because of them, we've got this Duncan and Hill court decision that we talk about. Basically, you are only allowed, ladies and gentlemen, to fill in the blanks of a bar association approved contract. You're not supposed to go in there and cross off pre-printed text. You're not supposed to rewrite legal jargon. Like, no, you're just supposed to fill in the blanks. Anything that's more complex, an attorney is supposed to do. So that's what that has to do with, but they haven't been testing on that either. Okay? There's your Article 78 proceeding, which we covered earlier. Make sure to read over the disclosure for required, disclosure requirement for uncapped wells. They don't test on it, but I still, there's still things you got to learn to be efficient in the real estate business. And this is something you might see if you work in a rural or semi-rural area. You usually don't see uncapped wells in urban areas. City of Buffalo, city of Lackawanna, they don't have a lot of uncapped wells around. But you could see some in Clarence. You could see some in Newstead. You could see some in some of the rural parts of the state, okay?
Across the U.S. that have run dry or fallen into disrepair, and a serious environmental hazard.
Many operators over the years have not plugged these wells, so they've become a source of greenhouse gas emissions, primarily methane. They can have toxic air emissions. They can leak into groundwater. They can still leak oil at the surface and create a fire hazard.
When this happens, it's often because the operator has gone bankrupt and its wells have been left to languish. Or maybe the well was built before documentation was even required, so nobody knows whose responsibility it is anymore. The exact number of so-called orphaned wells in the United States is anybody's guess.
States have counted about 130,000, but the EPA estimates there might be as many as 2 million or more. And a lot of these are very old wells where the record keeping isn't very good, and we just don't know exactly where they are.
When operators can't plug their wells, the responsibility falls to the government, and historically, it's been a low priority. 150 years ago, the first U.S. oil well was drilled in Pennsylvania. Millions more came after, dotting the country from Southern California to Texas, Oklahoma, and Appalachia. About 940,000 wells are actively producing oil and natural gas today, but many more are no longer in operation. When a well reaches the end of its life, companies are required to plug it, and oil giants like Chevron and ExxonMobil certainly have the funds to do so. The problem comes, though, when smaller or less well-financed operators can't afford to meet their plugging obligations. Here at the Placerita oil field, the first wells were dug in the 1880s, but the last known operators, Caltico and Century Oil, went bankrupt.
They did not properly maintain the site, and they basically left it abandoned and deserted. Corrosion occurred, tanks and vessels are just left here rusting. It's an eyesore, it's an environmental hazard, and it's a cleanup that's been long overdue.
Highways nearby, all these need protecting.
About 9 million Americans live within a mile of a documented orphan well, which can leak contaminants into the groundwater supply if it's not properly sealed. And the infrastructure for these wells often clutters the surrounding landscape.
A lot of these orphan wells are, either pipes sticking out of the ground, which create their own danger, or can come with a whole set of old oil and gas infrastructure, tanks, pump jacks, things that are just left behind to rust.
And then there's the emissions. Methane is the second most abundant human-created greenhouse gas, and it's particularly potent, with over 80 times the global warming potential of CO2 over a 20-year period. And we know now that it's leaking from old oil and gas wells, largely thanks to Mary King, assistant professor of civil engineering at McGill University. She says that until recently, people just assumed that methane leaks were minimal.
When I started doing these measurements in 2013, I was really surprised to find out that there were no measurements of methane emissions from abandoned oil and gas wells in the United States. My paper was the first to publish methane emission rate measurements directly from these abandoned oil and gas wells.
Taking measurements in Pennsylvania, she was able to estimate that deserted wells account for about 4 to 7% of the state's man-made methane emissions.
Page 25 is next. So we talk about suspension or revocation of a real estate license. Okay, so here's another moment. New York has been testing on this, okay? Make sure that you know any of these 6 items are reasons that your license could be revoked. When you act in an untrustworthy manner, if you intentionally try to mislead or misrepresent, that's a real popular one that people have been getting in trouble with. Falsifying documents to get your license. Do you know that actually about 4 years ago, maybe 5, we actually got a call from the state because somebody took a certificate from our school, they photoshopped it, and tried to use it to get a real estate license. Like how dumb can a person be? I would never play games with a professional license and do something like that. Like, oh my God. But this is how crazy the world is, ladies and gentlemen. I want to talk about also this item under this paragraph here where we talk about 4 times the amount. So if you remember from earlier in the chapter, violation of the license law is a misdemeanor. If you break the law, you could be fined up to $1,000 and a year in jail. But what if you have the potential to make $65,000? Some people would say, you know what? I'll sit in jail for a couple months because you probably won't get a full year in jail. Well, this is the extra penalty. So if you make money by doing something illegal, by breaking the license law, you also have to pay a fine of up to 4 times the amount you receive, plus up to 1 year in jail, plus a misdemeanor. Okay? So that's what we talk about there. We also let you know that if you happen to be one of those people in the world that have to pay child support, if you are 4 months or more in arrears, then you may not be able to qualify for a license. So make sure that you're caught up on your child support if you are one of those people. And you may not be able to renew a license if you're more than 4 months in arrears. This is another question that was just on last. So here's the interesting thing. Revocation of a broker's license. That means the person who's the broker who sponsors all the people under that broker, if your license is revoked, they're all suspended. I want to make sure that you know this. So please know revocation of a broker's license. Read over these broker fast facts at the bottom half of the page. Read this over, but I want you to cross off something. You don't need to know this Interstate Land Sales Disclosure Act. You don't need to know that. The other items, make sure you read them over. There hasn't been any testable items on there, though, okay? You don't need to know this either. They have not been testing on the divorce stuff. So just give it a cursory review.
Overall, working in the real estate industry is relatively safe, but according to the 2020 Realtor Safety Survey results, nearly a third of our members have been in a situation where they have felt fear. It is the goal of NAR's Realtor Safety Program that each and every one of our members is vigilant, aware, and educated on how to stay safe so they come home to their families every night. The Realtor Safety Program is all about helping members understand the risks that they face, which can mean the difference between life and death. Here are some safety tips while working in the office. Safety starts on day one. It's very important for brokers to build a culture of safety in the office and to share the importance of that with their agents on their very first day. It's important to keep records of every client that you are going out on a showing with. Take a copy of their photo ID to have on hand. It's also important to not work in the office alone and never walk out of the office alone late at night. Here are some safety tips to keep in mind for meetings, showings, and open houses. First and foremost, never meet a potential client alone for the first time. Even if you've spoken on the phone with them, always have them come into your office or meet them in a neutral location like a coffee shop. For open houses as well, bring a colleague, bring a buddy, never host an open house alone. It's important to always have your phone on you. You can use safety apps, you can check in with your colleagues back at the office, a spouse, a friend. It is smart to have a code or distress signal where if you need to let them know that you are in a risky situation and you feel unsafe, you can either text a certain code word or an emoji or say a certain phrase, and they will know that you need help right away. It's important to keep wardrobe in mind. You want to be able to escape quickly if needed. Consider wearing flats. Do not wear flashy jewelry. Lock your purse in the trunk of your car. Keep it somewhere safe, but don't carry it on your person when going to a showing or an open house. At a showing, always let the clients walk in front of you. That way, you can keep an eye on what's going on. No one can surprise you. Never go into an attic, basement, or crawl space at a showing. Let the clients go in, explore it on their own, and let you know what they think. Realtors are friendly, outgoing people, but what can happen is we can overshare information. Don't friend every potential client on Facebook where they know where you're going and when, your favorite places to visit, and your schedule. While we dedicate September as Realtor Safety Month, it's so important to keep safety at the forefront of your mind. Keep it in your conversations. Call each other out on it. Stay safe year round, every day.